the UFC 285 card from a DFS perspective. And for those of you that didn't notice, we are running this live. Now, again, I didn't get any notification that we were doing it live. So unless you have your YouTube notifications on, you're not going to see this. But if you do want to come in and ask a couple of questions along the way, I don't expect too many people here, again, with no notice, but feel free to come on in here. So again, this is going to be the DFS portion. We're going to do an MMA betting breakdown probably tomorrow, and that's equally fun, and it's a completely different approach, as you guys have probably seen over the last several months. So it's quite a good card. I mean, we have a full 14 fights right now. Hopefully, we don't lose any, and we've got a lot of name value. We have a lot of talent, and it's a very, very difficult card from a DraftKings perspective because you have a lot of really, really big big favorites. But that means you have a lot of big underdogs, right? And again, the way DraftKings pricing works, it's not exactly dynamic. Like they'll put a couple of guys over 9K, a couple of guys, under 7K, and that's going to be kind of the range. And they don't really distinguish between a guy that's minus 300 to win as opposed to minus 800 to win. And the thing is that you have to pick some underdogs to make your lineups work. And when you have underdogs that have very little winning chances, it becomes very, very challenging because you do want to, access those high ceiling type fighters. Yet this is the way DFS works, right? You can't do that without putting low salary fighters in there. And when the low salary fighters have very, very little winning chances, it makes things difficult. To that end, by the way, one of the things I had put in my sheets starting this week is something really interesting. It seems very, very simple, and these are early, whatever. I actually do put in just chance of winning, okay? And yes, that is already factored into the projection, but I think it's something to keep in mind. Right, that if you have to pick these underdogs, it's just very unlikely that you're going to be picking them in your lineups when they're less than 20% chance to win. It doesn't really matter what the leverage is, because it just happens so infrequently that the actual get the win that it's probably just like a throwout. Like for example, this week we have literally a 15-1 underdog in Jamie Pickett. And yeah, he's going to be like 5% owned or something like that. But it's just his winning chance is so low, you probably just don't want to play it at all. So that's something to keep in mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the card, and we're looking for good inside the distance props, good grappling upside, and things like that. But we're really trying to think about what underdogs we can even play to fill in our lineups. Because as we get to them, there are a couple of really high ceiling guys that we do want to get to. And it's that context of the slate we have to really keep in mind. So this first one is just kind of added to the card at the end. And this is Esteban Ribovic versus Loic Razbadov. So you have a minus 300 favorite. And what that usually translates to, if you were going to price it right on DraftKings, I expect to see probably like 9K, 7,200, something like that. And I think they did a pretty good job of that part. Yeah, it's exactly 9K, 7,200. So what you're looking for in a 9K fighter in general is somebody that either has about a chance to win inside the distance, about pick 'em, in other words, like a minus 110 inside the distance prop, or a significant amount of grappling upside. So when we look at the metrics here, you have we always look at the favorite first. You have Rajabov, who has inside the distance prop of not quite good enough. It's like +1. If you account for Vig, probably like +170. So unless he has a significant amount of grappling upside, wrestling upside, it's probably not that great of a play. The thing is that there's so little tape and there's so little information on him. I mean, I've heard people speculate that he's a good wrestler, but the sample size is so small that I don't know if I can give him the credit that he needs to be like a really, really good play, because you're going to need that grappling upside to get there. As a 9K fighter with an inside the distance prop is not as weak, but as kind of pedestrian as this is. So I think that if anything, he's a fringy play. If it turns out that he's very low owned, then you're up. Sure, you could always do that for kind of leverage off of this kind of range. Like right now, my ownership projections are really, really weak. I haven't really tightened them up yet, but like for now, I have him at where is he? Can't even find him on my list. He's somewhere. I promise you he's somewhere. He is, what's his ownership? Not Ribovich. Who is he fighting? Oh, there it is, Loic. I'm 21%, which is probably about where it should be. So it's not really that great of a, it's really just not that great of a play. Moving up, you have Damon Blackshear versus Farid Basharat. And this is the brother of the other Basharat who we saw fight up like a month or so ago, who's very impressive. That doesn't necessarily mean that this guy's going to be impressive, but according to the odds, he's very likely to win. He's like a minus 500. So if you were going to price this just based on the money line, I mean, a minus 500 probably should be about 90, 700 or something like that, 9,600. But because, again, the way DraftKings price, you're only pricing him at about 9,100. So he's better. He's much better value, for example, than Rostabov. But we still have to look and see if he's a good play. Right? We still have to look and see what his inside the distance prop is. And likewise, at 9,100, that's what we're looking for. You're looking for an inside the distance prop of about pick'em, or in the absence of that, a good amount of grappling upside. And when you look at the inside the distance prop, you see Basharat inside the distance is not quite good enough. It's like plus 180 if you account for VIG. And I have to say that with respect to the grappling upside, as weird as it is, I mean, I feel as though that Blackshear is more of the wrestler than Basharat. So I don't know if Basharat really has that significant grappling upside to overcome the lack of an inside the distance prop that's really strong. So not so sure that he's such a great play. The first thing I forgot to mention, by the way, I left this this Rajabov fight without speaking about the underdog, because at plus 230, at least he's got a chance. So we do have to take a look at his. So we'll get back to it for just a second. See, Rubovich inside the distance is plus like 330. And I have to say that given the lack of good underdogs as far as winning chances, I think the combination of his like maybe plus 260 winning chances, plus that, I guess plus 330 or so inside the distance prop, I think that it's a pretty reasonable play as an underdog, as opposed to, say, Blackshear, who he just doesn't have enough winning chances. Now, what he has going for him is, I will say that he's supposed to win the fight, about 20% of the time? The 20% of the time that he does win, he's going to do it via his wrestling, So it seems unlikely that happens, but if in fact it does, I mean, you get a wrestler securing the decision here against Basharat at what's his price? 7,100? Is that what he is? At 7,100? I mean, that's not the worst, but the problem is just it's so unlikely. Like 20% chance is just not. It's really just not going to be good enough, because even when he wins, he doesn't always make the optimal. That's the problem. So you are going to get an ownership break. I mean, he's probably going to be only 10% owned. So I'm probably going to end up talking myself into this, right? I'll probably end up talking myself into a sprinkle of him in MME, as I will this first underdog. So again, like, it's just only winning 20% is just kind of a rough thing to overcome. But I do think that all of his wins involve some takedowns, which is what we want to see. Okay, moving on, we have Ricci versus Penne. And this one scares me just a little bit. I shouldn't say scares. We'll talk about it when we do the betting breakdown. But This has been the easiest fight for everybody to break down, which is always a little bit concerning. But we'll talk about that from the betting perspective. You have Tabitha Ricci, who is basically younger and stronger, and she has 5 takedowns in her last fight, and 5 takedowns in the fight before that. And she's, what is she? Much younger. Penny's like 40 years old. Seems pretty easy, right? Ricci just goes out, gets a bunch of takedowns, and gets a decision. Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, let's take a look at the inside the distance prop first of all, because you're not going to see any finishes. Not see any, but let's take a look at the inside the distance prop here. You get Ricci. I will say this: if Ricci has an inside the distance prop of even like plus 200, that plus her takedown upside could be pretty juicy. But I don't think we're going to get it now. Ricci inside the distance like plus like 400. So basically, what you're saying is that if you're paying 8,900 for her, she's got to get like, I mean, 8,900. You need 100 points, right? So to get that, she needs to even do better than just say like 1 takedown around. I mean, she needs to control. She needs to ground. She needs to get some ground strikes. It's not like the score you need from like a $7,200 fighter through grapples. So I don't know if Ricci's got really enough upside at 8,900 to justify playing her. Now it's listen, it's a 14 fight slate, right? And that's part of the problem, is you're going to need like 100 almost at probably everybody here. And take a look at the ownership. Again, this is early, but I guess Ricci at 18%. I mean, that's low enough owned that maybe she's okay. But if she ends up like that really popular 25% owned fighter, I'd probably avoid it. But look, the win condition is pretty strong. It's win by decision, getting about 90. That's probably what she ends up doing. Now, the other side of this, you have Penne, who's a pretty. So here's a couple of things. First of all, they had this fight carded for a month ago, and a month ago you had Ricci, who's like minus 190. So I don't know exactly what's happened between now and then, but for whatever reason, this line is like shot up for no reason at all. If we ran this back at the old prices, like Penne at like plus 180 would probably be a good underdog here. I mean, who's to say that she should really be plus 300? But we have to be pure. We have to say probably doesn't have the greatest win condition here. I think that if Penne got the win, it would actually, though, it might take the form of a submission. She does have submissions in her record, and Ricci. Listen, when you go for a bunch of takedowns, you do put yourself in a position to get armbarred. You do put yourself in a position to get submitted. And Penne, she's 40, whatever, but she's been around the block. She knows her submission stuff. So, if Ricci's not careful, Penne can get a hold of like a finger or something like that and get the toe hold or whatever it is. And if she can get like some random finish at 7,100 at no % ownership, I mean, I'm playing it. I really am. This is one of those fights where everybody's so into like the one side of the narrative that they forget about the other. And when Ricci's is taking her down and she's holding her, and now she's going for her third takedown in the second round, and next thing you know, like Penne fangs an arm and finishes her and gets like 90 points at 7,100. I mean, you're gonna want that. So I'm going to be involved in this underdog. So right now, actually involving myself in all 4 of these underdogs, which is kind of disgusting. Okay, but that's the way it's going to be. All right, Ian Gary versus Kenan Song. So this is an interesting one because Ian Gary is he's definitely one of the more hated fighters with respect to DraftKings. He really just doesn't score that much. We'll get to that in a minute, but they're giving him a fight, which is against a guy. Let's put it the way it is. I mean, he's making him a 700 favorite. So those win odds are very, very difficult to overcome. So listen, if this is the first underdog, we're not taking. Okay. But let's take a look at the price on Ian Gary. Ian Gary at 9,300. I mean, he's going to need, at least a -110 instead of good distance prop. But ideally, you want the -110 plus the grappling upside at 9,300. Or the first round KO upside, or even the quick minute bonus upside, or something like that. So I can tell you right now, he's not going to show up like that. But we'll just take a look. Let's see. Ian Gary is inside the distance would be. Again, I always have issues with the site. Excuse me. Gary inside the distance is like forever here. There it is. Minus. I don't even have a good line actually yet on him. This is very weird. Why don't they have a good line on him? Well, we could pull that up on DraftKings. Hang on just a second. Let me go find this on the other page. Now it's probably not going to. Oh, it will let me actually. So let's do that. Let's go into the sports book and let's see if we can find the odds on inside the distance for Gary. That's pretty weird. Then on best fight odds we don't see it. Let's just see. Let's find Ian Gary. So we're going to look at winning method, and the way you do that is you look by second chance here. By DK or submission, it's -200. Wow. So that's really, really strong. I was not expecting this. Ian Gary with an extremely strong inside the distance prop. That was very, very surprising to me. And then let's see what else they have here. How about particular rounds? Ian Gary to win by finish. There it is, -200. I mean, that's pretty damn strong. I wasn't expecting this. Wow. Let's look at the round props. Ian Gary in round 1 is +150. So shows what I know. He's basically the best play on the slate so far. Not to mention that he actually does have a little bit of grappling upside. So here we go. This is I'm very surprised at this result actually. But we're doing it live, and that's what we see. So let's go back in here. Let's pull up the board again. So Ian Gary looks so far to be the best play. Look at that. And I was not expecting that. Anyway, so that's that. And Song, as I mentioned, is going to be a fade. He just doesn't have enough winning chances. Okay, moving on. We have Cameron Saman versus Leomano Martinez. So you have Saman -300. So again, we're expecting about 9,100, 7,100 price, something like that. And actually, wow, Saman, you're getting some pretty good line value on him. I mean, 8,800 at this price. 8,800 at this price is extremely strong. Not to mention, I mean, let's take a look at the inside the distance prop here. You have Saman inside the distance is like +140 at 8,900, which is just right about good enough for openers. Not to mention that he also has some takedown upside and just overall just good pace and volume. I mean, this is an extremely strong play. I mean, I think this is nice so far. The second best play on the slate. Let's take a look at Martinez side. Martinez again, he's only like 3-1 to win, so he's going to need something like a decent inside the distance prop or something. And you got Martinez +600 or something inside the distance, so no thanks. So there you go. So you have Saman and Gary so far as the two plays. And not surprisingly, these are also the two fighters that I'm not going to take the other side of the fight with. Right. Moving on, we have, is it Marquez Barrios next? Yep. So Julian Marquez versus Marc-Andre Barrios. It's close to a pick 'em. You have actually Barrios as a slight favorite. I would probably make him 8,400 or so, or 8,300 on the money line. I'm on the DraftKings line. Let's see what they make him. Yeah, it's about right. Close enough. 8,200, 70 to 8K. Maybe you get a little bit of line value on Barrios. We'll get back to this in a second. I mean, not much. He just moved up a little bit. Like some books have it minus 160, minus 150. So with the VIG minus 135. Yeah, okay. A little bit of line value here. Let's take a look at the inside the distance prop. You have Barrios, who is, let's see. Barrios inside the distance is about plus 200, which is fair. I mean, for this price. And then you actually have Marquez inside the distance, like plus 220. They're very, very close. Okay. Very close. I think they're very, very, they're priced appropriately given their DraftKings price, right? Like, given this inside the distance prop, I think it's very reasonable to play either of these guys in this matchup. I will also say that Barrios, I think, is going to be more popular. So Marquez, I think, certainly is I think he could be decent leverage. But I think this fight overall could be somewhat decent leverage. I won't say leverage, but it becomes like a fight that you want to play because, as I mentioned, good underdogs are hard to come by. And when good underdogs are hard to come by, this mid-range becomes really important because it allows you to play low, decent underdogs, underdogs with a chance to win. So yeah, I like both sides of this fight actually, and I think this fight's going to be low owned. I do, but for it to be low owned, I mean, there's going to have to be good underdogs to play. We'll get to hopefully some more of them. All right, so moving on, you have Amanda Ribas versus Viviane Araújo. You have Ribas as the slight favorite, so she should be about 8,179. I mean, 82, 8K, something like that. And that's what we're getting. It's about right. As you might imagine, it's probably pretty poor inside the distance prop here. I mean, we're going to compare this one to the one we just looked at, the Barrios fight, to compare apples to apples. And here you have, let's look at both these fighters. You have Ribas inside the distance is plus 500 or plus 400, and even Araújo inside the distance, she's definitely the better side, plus 230. This is actually that's by decision. Oops, sorry. Her by inside the distance also plus 400. So plus 400, just no good. He's just no good. I've heard narratives that Araújo's got a lot of power. Hey, if she knocks out Ribas, then I guess I lose. I don't know. And it's not like she can't do it, but whatever. And Ribas, I guess you can make the case that she has some grappling upside. But again, at her price at 8,300, I mean, you got to do better. You got to get 90, don't you? And I guess if I had to pick anybody in this fight, I guess it would be Ribas just because of the grappling, because of the wrestling. But it's probably, in the end, it's probably going to be a significantly underweight and probably maybe even all-out fade for me. Okay, we have Dricus du Plessis versus Derek Brunson. Minus 240. Actually, given the VIG, it's minus 200. So I would expect to be, again, about 9,100, 7,100, 9,000, 7,200, something like that. And, ooh, we get some line value. So du Plessis is only 8,700. Well, it's not that great. It's actually worse than Saman, right? I mean, you look at both these guys' prices. Saban was minus, let's look at the top thing. Saban was minus 300, and he was 8,800. Is that what it was? And then you have Duplessis minus 240. It's only 100 less. So it's definitely, Saban's definitely the better line value, but Duplessis maybe is like okay. But if you look at inside the distance prop here, like this fight's really interesting. So first of all, you have Duplessis by inside the distance is, I mean, minus 120. I mean, that's super duper strong. You know, and not only is that super strong, but he also has a great, you know, some decent, well, I wouldn't say takedown upside, but definitely some grappling, like on the ground type upside. Like he could definitely get some ground and pound going. But he doesn't even need it with this inside the distance prop. I mean, this is very, very strong. I mean, I put him right alongside of these other top plays that I already put out there. So where's Duplessis? Let's put him in there. Very, very strong play. Oh, I put him in already. Okay. Let's get rid of Barrio for a second. Okay, so these are like the three really, really strong plays that you want to play for now. We'll get to some others in a minute. And you look at Brunson's inside the distance prop. It's non-existent, but Brunson, his entire path to victory is going to be in the grappling. Excuse me, is in the wrestling. And we've seen this before from him, where he comes in as an underdog and just keeps control of the guy. I think the Kevin Holland fight is the one that you know, it's the one I'm thinking of right now. But this is what he's done his whole career. Now it's not as if he's a spring chicken or anything like that. He's 39 years old, but it's what the guy does. I mean, it's definitely a tough matchup for him. I mean, Duplessis is much, you know, very, very active, and he might be able to get taken down, get up, and ground and pound him anyway. I don't know if he can survive that pace, but if you play Duplessis, I mean, you are running the risk of, you know, Brunson getting a takedown first round and riding out that whole first round, you know, and then you're kind of screwed. But you know what? That's all been factored into the price. You know, that's all been factored into the fact that he's minus 120 inside the distance. I mean, that's the one thing is that in Duplessis wins here, I think he's going to score well. You know, like even in his last fight where he didn't get takedowns, not his last fight he got a bunch of takedowns, but in the fight before that against Tavares, he was still extremely active. You know, so I think that Duplessis is a very, very strong play. But Brunson though, at plus 220, you know, he's going to win this fight 30% of the time, right? And of the 30% of the time that he wins, I think that it's safe to say that he gets 3 takedowns at least. I would say 100% of the time, right? So if he's going to get, and if he's going to get 3 takedowns, remember, we're presuming he wins. We're not saying can he get the takedowns. We're not saying, oh, he can get the takedowns and then he can get reversed and lose. You know, I'm saying if he does win, which does happen according to these odds 30% of the time, I'm considering he's going to have to get at least 3 takedowns, and I would say a minimum of 10 minutes of control time, right? So if we want to figure out like what that is, just for fun, this is a tool that I have. I do want to put this up on the site eventually. We're looking to get an API call where we can get this automatically. But to say what that is, let's say you want 10 minutes of control time. Let's even do a little less. Let's put 500 seconds of control time. We'll go 3 takedowns. We'll do like, I don't know, even 50 significant strikes, maybe 50 strikes, 30 significant strikes, if that, and a decision win. So that's 76. So 3 takedowns, 50, 30. 70 is not going to, 76 is probably not going to be enough, right? If you got 5 takedowns, then it might be enough. And if you got more than this in significant strikes, then obviously, you know, we could pull this up. But it's not so easy to get there, actually, you know, without getting a finish. And it's funny. So I think that Brunson is an okay underdog play. You know, keep something in mind. You know, Duplessis is probably going to be one of the more popular fighters. So if in fact you do get that 30% home where Brunson wins, I mean, this is probably the, what the scoreboard is probably going to look like. He'll get like around 80 or so, 85, but you're also going to be getting leverage on all of the Duplessis lineups, which will exist. I mean, I already have him at 35%. So it's gross again, but I think I'm going to take some shots on the underdog as well. Do I think he's going to win? No. But when he does win, I think you're very happy with it. Okay, we'll get back to Valentina in a minute. What's the next fight we want to do? We'll do Trevin Jones versus Cody Garbrandt. And forget about everything else. Forget about the narratives. Forget about all the stuff you're hearing. Let's just look at the numbers for this one. You have Cody Garbrandt is minus 177, so with the VIG it's like minus 160. So he's probably about an 8,600, something like that. Let's see what he is actually. 8,500, perfect. So there's no line value here. That's totally fair. So if you want to start with the favorite, if you're 8,500, you probably need an inside the distance prop of about plus 170 or plus 160. Remember, we were accepting like plus 200 for the 8K fighters, and we wanted like even money on the 9K fighters. So in the 8,500s, I think it's pretty fair to say we want about, maybe plus 160 or something like that, or maybe plus 150, maybe some wrestling upside. All that would help. Let's take a look and see what we have here. I mean, we do have Garbrandt inside the distance once this unfreezes. Garbrandt inside the distance is very, very strong, like plus 120 or something like that. Depends on where you go, but this seems like a pretty reasonable, I mean, to say the least, inside the distance prop for Garbrandt, and I'm not really seeing too much love on this in the on the streets, So it's weird. I mean, who's betting this? I mean, all I'm hearing about is how Trevin Jones is going to knock him out, or that Garbrandt is washed, or whatever it is. So I don't know. All I'm seeing here is an inside the distance prop is very reasonable for that price. So I'm in there. As a matter of fact, I think the sucker bet is the other side. You have Jones. His inside the distance prop is plus 300. For plus 300, that's what we need for like $7,300 fighters, $7,200 fighters. I mean, he's 7,700. I don't think I'm particularly interested in that side of it. I mean, I think the Garbrandt side could be somewhat sneaky here. It's a guy that nobody likes to play because, I mean, look at his log here. KO, then a loss. He had one win here, and then like a whole bunch of losses. I mean, boy, oh boy, who wants to play that? And no result wins. This one wins. How about that? How about 12 takedowns in 2016? Actually, that's not 12. It's not 12 takedowns. 12 significant strikes. Sorry, that's an early first round KOs. So he's got some KO upside here. Why not? It's a long time ago, but we'll see. We'll just see what happens. He did lose to Andre Munoz. Oh, it was Pedro Munoz. Sorry. So yeah, I think this could be a kind of a low-owned option. We'll take a look at the ownership right now, but let's just see what it is. Garbrandt only 20%. I mean, it's a rough one to play if you know something about MMA. So fortunately, I don't. All right, moving on. You have Bo Nickel versus. We're going to do that one first, or we're going to do yeah, we're going to do the Bo Nickel one first. So Bo Nickel is a three-time NCAA championship wrestler from Penn State, and he's gotten into MMA and has been training really hard. He's been doing terrific. He just starches everybody. Has good submission skills now, and this is a very well-anticipated debut in the UFC. And they're giving him, Jamie Pickett, who, he shows up on these cards every once in a while, and I mean, he's been a guy that people have hated. I mean, I don't say hated. It's that people don't really even think too much about it. Let's just go back to Jamie Pickett's career here. So he came in. Well, forget this one. In this fight before this against Nchukwi, He came in and he actually had a really good performance. He had like if you go back, he had like this like 20 punch combination where he KO'd some guy, and then he fought Nchukwi and he lost. I don't know, pretty reasonable. I mean, lost a three round decision to Kenny Nchukwi is okay. And then he fought against Jordan Wright, and he was one of the more popular fighters on the slate against Jordan Wright. Because Jordan Wright always loses to everybody, and Jamie Pickett was like 8K that night, yeah, and he was like really popular, and he just got blitzed. Okay, so from that moment on, he's basically like the most hated man in America. So then he came back at 7,200 as an underdog, and won a very grinded it out, decision against Tripoli. Didn't win anybody any money because look, he only scored 66 fantasy points. Then he comes back and he fights Joseph Holmes. He wins again, another like very pedestrian performance. But you know what? Got 2 takedowns of his own, And listen, he doesn't care about his fantasy points, even though it was only 66. But as an underdog, he wins again. Then he comes and he fights Kyle Dawkins, and he lost by sub. And then they ran him up against Dennis Touloulian, and they actually made him the favorite in this by a little bit. And he was okay in the first round. Then he got just kind of overwhelmed in the second round. So now they're putting him in against the hype train, and I say that lovingly. I'm sure he's like awesome, and you're getting the highest win odds I've ever seen in MMA, and that would be 20-1, which is what nickel is. Now, if you had to price nickel on DraftKings based on what his win odds are, you'd probably be like 12,000 or 13,000 or something like that. But remember, keep something in mind. You can't win more than once. You know what I mean? Like, what do I mean by that? So let's say that Bo Nickel has a 60% chance of winning the fight in the first round, right? And let's say I don't know, Ian Gary's got a 20% chance of winning the fight in the first round. Yeah, so it's 3 times more likely that Bo Nickel does it, but it's not like Bo Nickel could do any better than winning in the first round. You know what I mean? Like if let's say if Ian Gary, as an example, wins in the first round, then it doesn't matter that Bo Nichols is minus 900. It doesn't matter if he's minus 5,000. Okay, the score is the score, and you can't increase the ceiling just because of your win odds. What you can increase is the likelihood that you reach the ceiling. But I don't know, it's just something to consider. But you look at some of these props here. It's like it's really actually quite amazing. We'll look through it just to give you a couple of examples. So Bo Nichols, Nichols wins by TKO is minus 230. Win by submission is minus 170 or so, minus 140. Inside the distance, he is minus 400 to win inside the distance. Okay, as a matter of fact, it's almost is it a pick'em? No, it's not quite a pick'em. Nichols wins in round 1 is minus 200, minus 180 it looks like. Okay, so 67% of the time implied by the odds he's going to finish in the first round. That doesn't include the times that he finishes in the first 60 seconds, where you get the 130-point bonus or whatever it is. You get the 120-point bonus. You're scoring 130 points. Okay, so for all of that, he should be 14,000, but he's not. He's 9,600. So he's clearly the best play. And listen, as I like to say, I mean, if you can afford him, play him. And I'll tell you this: that there have been 9,600 fighters that have been much worse than this. So if you could play him, that's great. But again, what you have to consider is what playing him does. You have to be able to fill in lineups with the $9,600 guy. Now, you would think, by the way, that instinctively, if you could play Ian Gary, then you probably can find the 300 for nickel, but it's not exactly as easy to say as to say play Bo Nickel, because you have to make your lineups work. But there's no denying those props. There's no denying that, those metrics. There's no denying. I mean, like a minus 200 to win in the first round. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you have to play this. Not to mention that he's got takedown upside. So any result that I think it doesn't go out of the first round, that doesn't finish in the first round, it's just because he's gotten a billion takedowns and he just hasn't gotten the sub yet. So it's possible that might even be a better result for Nickel if he finishes him in the second round. But I will say this. Well, we'll talk about it when we get to the betting. I got this feeling. I'm not gonna say Pickett wins, but they've had worse fighters in spots like this. Like when they throw like guys to the wolves for these hype trains coming in, I've seen them throw worse fighters in these spots. Like I think that guy that's fighting Ian Gary is like is worse. You know, listen, different type of fighter, whatever it is. But not even that. I mean, sometimes you find guys that are like literally have no chance to win. And Pickett has 3 UFC wins, right? It's not like he's the worst. But anyway, there's no denying those metrics. I think he's the best play, and you can play him through. Moving on, we have 3 more fights. Yeah, 3 really good ones too. Actually, 4. Wow. So we'll start with Jalen Turner versus Mateusz Gamrot. So we'll get to the breakdown in a minute. But let's take a look at the odds. So Gamrot is a -220, actually -200 with the VIG. So I'm expecting him to be about, what's that, 8,900 or something like that. That's what we said. He's going to be similar to who was the other -200 that looked like that? Like Duplessis. He has a very similar type line to Duplessis. So I expect his price to be similar. Gamrot 8,600. Yeah, it's about the same as Duplessis. Perfectly fine. Let's take a look at the inside the distance prop on him first. You have, hold on, let's pull this up. I don't imagine him to have a great inside the distance prop. Gamrot inside the distance is not bad. It's +160. And again, let's compare that to Saman, for example. Or not even Saman. Who's the guy we just mentioned? Duplessis. So if Gamrot's +160, Duplessis was plus. What did we say? Oh, Duplessis is like -110, right? So no comparison here. The only thing I would say though is that Gamrot's got an incredible takedown upside here. I mean, he gets a bunch of takedowns against, let's just put it this way, against much better grapplers than Jalen Turner. So I think the combination of the inside the distance prop, which is not great, not the worst, with his takedown upside makes him just as good of a play as some of these other guys we talked about. As a matter of fact, I think that puts him very similar to Stamen, because I don't think Stamen necessarily has the same, he doesn't have the same wrestling upside as Gamrot does. Stamen has a better inside the distance prop, but not as good a takedown upside. So that's what I think. I think that Saman and Gamrot are very similar as far as whether I like them, but behind Duplessis. Now, the other side of this is very, very interesting. So Jalen Turner, he is +200 to win. And at 7,100, well, what's for 7,400? I mean, you don't need that much of an inside the distance prop to be good. Like, you want to be like maybe +320 or something like that. And you look at this, you have Turner inside the distance. I mean, it's close at +310. I mean, that's not the worst. And I would say the only problem is this. Well, I shouldn't say this because that's all factored into the odds here. I just see variations where Turner wins a decision. And I think that he's going to be a little more popular than that. I think with the way people are going to be playing him is that, if Turner wins, he always gets there, or he always is optimal. I don't think it's necessarily that easy. But I do like him as one of the somebody to put in the underdog pool. But I wouldn't get particularly overweight on him. I maybe play him with the field or maybe a little under. But I think he's okay. Okay. Which is first? The Jeff Neal fight? I don't know what the order of these. Let's take a look at this. Sorry about that. You get a special trading desk secret. No. Just one with your. Okay, so next one is Rachmaninoff versus Neal. So we'll go backwards. If Rachmaninoff is 9,200 compared to 7,000, then you have you should probably be about a minus 300, maybe minus 310, 320 maybe. See what he actually is. He's minus 500. So this is already a tremendous play. Okay. And then you look at the inside the distance prop. We'd like it to be about either minus 110 or, again, with the takedown upside here. And Rachmanov inside the distance, like minus 120. Big play here. So he is another very elite play. And you see what's happening here. We're going to have to either play a bunch of them in a bunch of lineups, or we're going to have to make some decisions, because you have like a whole, look at this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 really, really good plays, and we haven't even gotten to the 2 5-round fights yet. So you see what I'm saying, right? Like you're going to have to find underdogs somewhere, because of these 6, I mean, you have to think 4 of them are going to smash, like at least. So if you get 4 of these smashing, I mean, you're gonna have to get to these guys somehow. So to get to them, you're gonna have to get to some of these underdogs. Very, very interesting. I mean, the more I'm looking at this, the more like a play like Brunson is starting to really look decent here. Just because Duplessis is going to be high owned, you're going to get leverage against him, and then maybe just play the other guys. I don't know. It's really, really difficult. Jeff Neal, his just win odds are just not good enough, and his inside the distance prop is poor as well. If he were a guy that every one of his fights that he won would be like a KO, I would say yeah, maybe. But Neal's inside the distance prop we have is probably plus 800, right? We'll take a look. Well, it wouldn't be that, but about that, like plus 800. It's ridiculous. So that's that. Rachmanov, very, very strong play. Neal fade. Then you get to the main event. I mean, excuse me, you don't get to the main event. We're not there yet. You get to Valentino Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso. Now you have Shevchenko at 9,400. So at 9,400, you're expecting to see, like minus 300, minus 400, minus 500, something like that. And it's what you're getting. Like minus more like minus 700. So perfectly decent line value, I guess. And the other thing is that, at that price, you kind of need grappling upside. Well, you have the combination of it. You have, not only do you have grappling upside, but you have 5 rounds. You know what I mean? You have 5 rounds to pile up those takedowns. I mean, and not to mention, like, this could be one of those fights where, well, I was about to say that you don't even want the finish if you have Valentina. I guess you always want the finish. But it just depends when and how you get it. But even Shevchenko inside the distance she's minus 120 inside the distance too. I mean, she's like what a tremendous play, So oops. I mean, like, what are we going to do here? That's like another, like, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 like incredible upside plays on this card. How do you prioritize them? How do you play them? How do you get to the underdogs here? Which underdogs do you play? Well, we'll remind ourselves of these underdogs I think you have to play here, okay? And I think it actually might come down to which underdog does the best in a loss, because, again, the more I'm looking at these favorites, I mean, I'm really seeing, like, at least maybe 5 of these guys, like, all getting over 100, and you get 5 guys over 100 and then 1 guy with, like, 40. And the loss, that might do it. And that's all the more reason for something like Brunson. Like Brunson gets like 45 in a loss or something like that with a bunch of takedowns but no wins. This is really making this Brunson play very appealing here, given the context of the slate. And Grasso, unfortunately, just doesn't have the win odds. Just can't get there. John Jones versus Cyril Gane. So John Jones, 8,400. I would expect him to be about a -140 favorite or something like that. And I think that's what you are getting. Yeah, about that. As far as the inside the distance props go, they're pretty pedestrian, actually. You have, what do you have? You have John Jones. Let's get him first. And I'm sorry, I'm always with this site. It's just see how it spins. You have Jones inside the distance is, I mean, it's plus 260. That's just terrible. I wouldn't say terrible, but I mean, you have Garbrandt, who's like plus 160, right, or something like that, inside the distance. Remember, Garbrandt. So what's better, the Garbrandt inside the distance prop or the Jones one? Remember, Garbrandt inside the distance means that he's finishing in the first 3 rounds. Jones inside the distance means he might get a 5th round finish, which may or may not even be good enough. You know, and you have Gane inside the distance is plus 320. I guess that's somewhat reasonable for his price, but not really even not that great. As far as the takedown upside, it's neither one really has that great takedown upside. I don't believe. The only thing I would say is that because you have the 5 rounds to work with, your volume can kind of, if you get enough significant strikes in, that 5 rounds can help your volume. So I think that in variations where Gane just basically, listen, if Jones is a little rusty coming back at the 3-year layoff and Gane just basically out-technicals him and gets a good striking victory, where normally that's not what you want in DFS, I think over 5 rounds you could get enough points where you can make that work. And which brings me to my point is that the other reason why, why that's pretty important here is that, again, in the absence of any good underdogs, I mean, Cyril Gane just has to be a great play, right? I mean, he's only 7,800, and it opens up some salary where you could get to some of these studs. So I think every little bit counts here, and to get the 5 rounds to work with him, I think it's real. I don't think you could spend the 84 on John Jones. I don't think you could do it. But listen, you have to build some lineups to figure that out for sure. But I think the Cyril Gane is going to be very, very useful to get to some of these studs, or studettes, as the case may be. So what does this mean to the average man? What this means is that to get to these studs, you can either, let's just say we were going to just take 2 of them out. I mean, if you want to play 3 studs even, then you have to pick some of these 7,300s, and unfortunately, I think that's what you're going to have to do. I know what people are going to want to do. They're going to play Barriold, something like that. You might even get some ownership out of that Arahu fight, just to open up some salary. And then I guess you play Gane from here, something like that. And even still, you can only play 2 studs in a situation like this. And it's not even studs. This is just Gary and Saman. So it's a very, very difficult card. You're going to have to take your shots at these underdogs and just hope that they do well enough. And I think what those would be, again, to summarize, there's Ribovich, hold your nose, Blackshear, Penne even, Martinez, no, Song, no, definitely Marquez. Well, it was definitely Marquez. Yeah, Marquez, definitely Brunson. Not Trevin Jones, not Pickett. You have to play some Jalen Turner. Gone. You don't have to play any Jeff Neal. So you don't have to play any Grass. There are underdogs you can fade, but you're going to have to get one of those 2 underdogs. And if they don't, at least get them maybe some points in losses. Like maybe it's possible that this Ribovich is not bad on the mat or something like that. Maybe Blackshear gets seriously. Maybe Blackshear gets like 4 takedowns somehow before losing. You know, maybe Marquez, no, Brunson definitely can get some points in a loss. You know, and obviously, what's his name? Jalen Turner. Well, I don't know if he's gonna get points in a loss, but obviously Don can get plenty of points in a loss. So I think that's the way you have to play this card. So stay tuned tomorrow from a betting perspective, where we take a completely different look at all this. And